BBC.
BBC.
You're with the BBC. Hello, I'm Anna McNamee. You're listening to The Strand. Coming up on today's programme, one of Japan's most prolific documentary makers tells a story of rape and revenge in a new feature film. Film director more intent on dissecting his country's present. The Japanese filmmaker Katsumi Sakaguchi is best known in his homeland for his cutting-edge documentary work. But now he's making ripples in the world of feature film as well. His latest is a disturbingly edgy drama about rape and revenge. In English, the film is called Sleep, but in its original Japanese, it's Nemurius Rika, which, as Sakaguchi explained with the help of his translator, is the name of a bug.
日本では
Nemrius Rika is a type of mosquito that lives in the desert of Africa. It's an extremely resilient type of insect and it survives through the dry season. The reason why I chose this as my title is because I wanted to allude to this will to live in relation to the main characters of this film.
There is a point in the film, isn't there, where the grandfather says to his daughter Kotono, he says, you must live, no matter what, you must live.
この家族はその
This family is all about survival, and the key point of this survival is that in order to do so, they have to work together as a family unit.
Having said that, it's quite a dysfunctional family. In some ways it's very happy, but in other ways it's very sad. This is a family who has been deeply affected by violence.
日本では
In Japan, we consider rape to be the murder of the soul, and with this film I wanted to pose a question to the audience, which is if you were 15 years old and coming home from a ballet class and just living your everyday life and then you were attacked and raped, what would you do? How could you step back from that?
The subject of violence, you've visited it before in your other films, I know in Catharsis as well and in Blue Tower. Both of these films also deal with, innocence that is lost after a very violent event. Why are you so interested in this subject? I wonder if it hasn't been inspired in part by your documentary work.
そうですね。僕の劇映画
As a documentary maker, I'm constrained by the boundaries of reality and society because all I'm doing is depicting what is real. When I make my feature films, what I want to do is to break out of those boundaries because the fictional element allows me to do so, and that's why I often handle violence in my feature films.
But it's a very dark perspective you seem to have of contemporary life in Japan, which is a world away from the images or the stereotypical images we have of cherry blossoms and geisha or even ginza and high-tech consumerism. And I wonder why you have such a dark, pessimistic vision.
私は今までドキュメンタリーを200本ほど作ってきました。
I've made over 200 documentaries, and my intention for all my documentaries is to pass on a message to Japanese society. I think the reason why my feature films could be considered to be dark and pessimistic is that I'm doing it deliberately because I want to make people think, I want to provoke people and make them really think about what's happening. When I'm making documentaries, I'm often left with a sense of dissatisfaction, a bit of frustration of what I couldn't tackle that's left inside me. It sinks inside me like a type of sediment. And the feature films that I make allows me to exhale it, to get it out of my system.
What has been the reaction in Japan to your films?
僕の映画は
I'd say that the type of films that I make and the reactions that they receive, it's rather similar to somebody who's tightrope walking. I'm always on the precipice. The main point that I wanted to make with this film is that Japan is very unsympathetic towards victims of sexual assault. The subject of rape is such a huge social taboo that victims are often forced to hide it from their families, not only their schools or the people that they work with, but from their families as well.
恥というのはその家族にとって
And Japan is a society in which the concept of shame is so great that even though you are the victim of a crime, the fact that it has happened to you almost makes it as though you are the perpetrator of it.
不思議だと思いませんか？何の落ち度もなく
And I just find it incredible that somebody who has been terrorized by another person who they don't know, somebody who's had something very special, their innocence taken away from them, is protected neither by their family nor the state. And I think that's a huge problem in Japan.
Will Japanese art continue to change, do you think, to reflect the changes in Japanese society?
僕は変わっていくべきだと思います。
I definitely think that art should always reflect society and its changes. One thing I'd like to mention is that a couple of years ago there was a film which was a huge hit in Japan, which also featured a main character who was a victim of rape. What was significant about this film, which was a huge hit, was that it depicted rape in such a way that it almost glamorized it. So there were teenage girls who saw this film and they almost ended up fantasizing about it happening to them. And I think that what this really says about the way art is reflecting society in Japan is that it is beginning to incorporate an element of fantasy, which means that it's no longer an accurate reflection of what's happening. So really what I'm trying to do is to counter that phenomenon. And that's why I think I tend towards severe violence in my films, because I need it as a shock tactic to counter what is actually happening in the arts at the moment.
日本はそういうふうに流れているんだと思います。
先生、どうもありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
Katsumi Sakaguchi, whose film Sleep or Nemuri Yusurika is being shown as part of this year's Japan Foundation Touring Film Program. More details on our website. I'm Anna McNamee. You're listening to The Strand, Global Arts and Entertainment from the BBC World Service.